My name is Bella Lawson. I'm 34 years old, and the night I cut my entire family out of my life started with a missing chair. Just one chair. It sounds ridiculous when I say it out loud now. People imagine betrayal has to arrive dramatically, with screaming arguments or slammed doors, or someone confessing something unforgivable. But sometimes it arrives quietly. Sometimes it's a single, empty space at a dinner table that tells you everything you've spent years refusing to admit. By the time Ethan and I pulled into my mother's driveway that evening, I already felt that familiar knot tightening in my stomach. "You okay?" Ethan asked softly as he parked the car. I forced a smile. "Yeah, just tired." But he knew better. Every family dinner since our wedding 2 years earlier had carried the same invisible tension. Not because of Ethan. My husband was patient, respectful, and calm in ways that almost irritated people who wanted conflict from him. The real issue had always been Sophie. 13 years old, quiet, gentle, still carrying invisible bruises from her parents' ugly divorce and Ethan's painful split from his ex-wife Vanessa. When Ethan and I got married, Sophie never asked for much. She just wanted reassurance she wouldn't become temporary in someone else's life again. The night before our wedding, she asked me one question while helping me fold napkins in the kitchen. "If you and Dad ever have your own kids someday, will things change?" I remembered putting the napkin down immediately. "No," I told her, "you will never be second in my house." I meant every word. Unfortunately, my family never cared enough to understand that promise. When we walked into my mother's house that night, the first thing I noticed was the dining table. Perfectly arranged. My mother treated dinners like formal ceremonies. Crystal glasses, folded napkins, candles burning in the middle of the table like we were auditioning to become a functional family. Without thinking, I counted the chairs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. My chest tightened. There were 7 of us. Ethan noticed at the exact same moment. His fingers briefly squeezed mine, subtle but firm. Sophie stood beside us, holding a small dessert box from the bakery near our house. She'd spent 20 minutes picking it earlier because she thought bringing something thoughtful might finally help my family warm up to her. Claire glanced up from her phone first. "Oh," she said flatly. "You brought her." The disappointment in her voice wasn't even hidden. Sophie's shoulders lowered just slightly. Ethan ignored the comment, but I saw the flicker in his eyes. He was exhausted too. He just hid it better than I did. Then my mother walked in, carrying a salad bowl. "Dinner's ready," she announced. Nobody moved. Sophie stayed beside me quietly, still holding the dessert. My mother finally looked toward the table, then toward Sophie. "There's no chair for her here," she said casually. The room went silent. Claire laughed under her breath. "Well, she's not really part of the family anyway." I felt Sophie go completely still beside me. Not angry. Not dramatic. Just still. Like something inside her had quietly folded inward. After a few seconds, she carefully placed the dessert box on the counter. "I can sit in the living room," she whispered. Claire shrugged. "Probably easier." That was the moment something inside me finally snapped. Not loudly. Not visibly. Just permanently. For 2 years, I had defended them in my mind. I told myself they needed time, adjustment, patience, understanding. But standing there, staring at that table, I suddenly understood something horrifying. The missing chair wasn't an accident. It was intentional. A message. and they expected me to accept it. Again, I didn't yell. I didn't argue. Instead, I slowly opened my purse and removed the thick envelope I had brought with me earlier that day. Then I placed it directly in the center of the table. The sound alone made everyone look up. My mother frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" I looked at her calmly. "You should open it." Claire rolled her eyes immediately. "Oh God, are we doing theatrics now?" My mother opened the envelope anyway. At first, she looked confused. Then the color drained from her face so quickly it startled even me. Claire leaned over impatiently. "What is it?" My mother said nothing. Claire grabbed the papers from her hands. Within seconds, her expression changed too. "What the hell, Bella?" I folded my hands together. "It means," I said quietly, "starting tonight, things are going to change for all of you." Claire flipped through the papers faster. "These are mortgage documents." "Yes." Uncle Victor leaned closer from across the table. "What about them?" Claire stared at me. "You removed your name." My mother gripped the edge of the table so tightly, her knuckles whitened. 5 years earlier, after my father died unexpectedly, she almost lost the house. Her credit wasn't strong enough to refinance a loan, so I stepped in. My income, my credit, my responsibility. Every month afterward, enormous portions of the mortgage quietly left my account. Nobody at that table had forgotten that. Until tonight. Aunt Denise cleared her throat nervously. "Bella, what exactly does this mean?" I slid another paper toward them. "It means I finalized everything this afternoon. I paid the remaining amount necessary to release myself from the loan." Claire blinked. "Release yourself from what?" "Responsibility." The silence afterward felt heavy enough to crack glass. My mother shook her head slowly. "You wouldn't do this to your own family." I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I looked toward Sophie. She stood near the kitchen counter, pretending not to listen, but her eyes kept drifting back toward the table, like she was bracing for impact. Then I looked back at my mother. "I already did." Claire slammed the papers down. "Over a chair?" "No," I said calmly, "not over a chair." My mother's voice sharpened instantly. "You're being ridiculous." Ethan finally spoke. "Ridiculous?" he repeated quietly. My mother ignored him completely. "Bella, we needed your help." "Yes," I said. "You did." Claire leaned forward suddenly. "And what about my academy payments?" "Not anymore." She stared blankly. "What?" "I canceled them this morning." For a second, she genuinely looked confused, like her brain physically refused to process the sentence. Then she laughed nervously. "Okay, stop, seriously." "I'm serious." Her expression hardened immediately. "You promised to cover my studio until next year." That was before tonight. Uncle Victor shifted uncomfortably. "Maybe everybody should calm down." Ironically, I was the calmest person in the room. For the first time in years, I wasn't trying to fix things. Claire pointed directly at Sophie. "You're throwing away your real family over her?" Sophie lowered her eyes immediately. Ethan stepped slightly closer to her. But I answered first. "No," I said. "I'm choosing my real family." Claire scoffed loudly. "She isn't even related to you." I stood slowly. "Exactly." Everyone stared at me. "And she still treated me with more kindness than any of you ever have." Silence. The kind where nobody breathes too loudly because the truth in the room suddenly feels dangerous. My mother slowly pushed her chair back from the table like she was trying to regain control of the room. "You're being dramatic," she said coldly. Sit down and stop this nonsense. I didn't move. Across the kitchen, Sophie picked up the dessert box again, clutching it carefully against her chest, like she regretted bringing it in the first place. Ethan stayed beside her without saying a word. Claire tapped the papers against the table sharply. You think you can just walk away from us? Yes. The answer came out so quickly that even I surprised myself. Claire blinked. That house exists because of you. I know. And now you're abandoning Mom? I'm removing myself from the loan, I corrected. The house is still hers. My mother looked like she had swallowed something bitter. You promised to help me. I did help you, I replied quietly. For 5 years. Uncle Victor rubbed his forehead. Come on, Bella. Families say hurtful things sometimes. Claire rolled her eyes dramatically. Oh, please. She's been here 2 years, and suddenly she matters more than your own blood? I looked directly at her. Claire had always needed to be the center of everything growing up. Every achievement I had somehow became something she deserved too. When I bought my first condo, she cried because it made her feel behind in life. When I got promoted at work, she somehow convinced our mother to help pay for her dance certification classes so she wouldn't feel left out. The academy was the perfect example. 3 years earlier, Claire decided she wanted to open her own dance studio. She didn't have the savings, the credit, or the business plan to support it. So I helped. The lease. The renovations. The monthly support when enrollment numbers dropped. Every single month, money quietly disappeared from my account to keep her dream alive. And somehow, despite all that, Sophie still wasn't worth a chair. Claire leaned back in her seat. You're bluffing. I shook my head. No. You wouldn't destroy everything over one stupid dinner. Without answering, I reached into my purse again and placed my phone onto the table. I already called the bank this afternoon, I said. Then I looked directly at Claire. And I called your property manager. For the first time all evening, real fear flickered across her face. What? I told him my financial support ends this month. You're lying. I'm not. My mother slammed her hand against the table hard enough to rattle the glasses. This is insane. Aunt Denise looked visibly nervous now. Bella, sweetheart, maybe everybody should sleep on this and talk tomorrow. I shook my head slowly. No, tomorrow is exactly why this is happening tonight. Claire crossed her arms. You're doing this because of that girl. Sophie shifted slightly behind Ethan, like she wanted to disappear completely. She's not your daughter, Claire snapped. No, I said calmly. She's not. Claire smirked triumphantly. Exactly. Then I said the thing none of them expected. But she's the only person in this room who has never used me. The silence afterward felt suffocating. My mother frowned. What are you talking about? I looked around the table carefully. For years, every time one of you called me, it was because you needed something. Mortgage payments, Claire's academy, Uncle Victor's emergency loan that somehow became permanent. Medical bills, holiday expenses, repairs, vacations. Then I looked toward Sophie. Do you know what she asked me the first time we met? Nobody answered. She asked if it was okay to call me Bella instead of Miss Lawson because she didn't want to make me uncomfortable. The room stayed quiet. And tonight, I continued softly, is the last time any of you get to ask me for anything. That was when my mother finally asked the question she should have asked years earlier. Bella, exactly how much money are we talking about? Something changed instantly. Nobody looked offended anymore. They looked scared. Claire frowned. What do you mean? My mother kept staring at me. "How much have you spent on this family?" I reached into the envelope and removed another folded sheet of paper. I made a list. Claire grabbed it first. At first, her expression stayed irritated, then confused, then pale. What the hell? Uncle Victor leaned over her shoulder. Aunt Denise followed. For years, I had tracked my finances carefully out of habit. Apparently, none of them had ever thought about where all the money actually came from. Mortgage assistance over 5 years. Claire's studio lease and renovations. Monthly support payments. Emergency loans. Holiday expenses. Medical bills. Insurance coverage. It wasn't one massive payment. It was hundreds of smaller sacrifices that quietly consumed years of my life. Claire stared at the bottom of the page. This can't be right. It is. Then she read the total aloud. $340,000? The room went completely silent. Even Ethan looked stunned. My mother lowered herself slowly into her chair again. "You're exaggerating." "I'm not." Claire laughed nervously. "No one spends that much on family." "I did." Uncle Victor shifted awkwardly. "Well, we just assumed you were doing well financially." "I was," I replied, "until I realized I was financing people who didn't even respect the people I love." Claire shoved the paper away. "So what? Families help each other." I nodded once. "Yes, they do." Then I pointed calmly toward the empty space at the table. "And families don't do that." Nobody spoke. My mother rubbed her temple slowly. "You're punishing us." "No," I said quietly. "I'm protecting her." Claire scoffed. "Oh my God, Bella, she's a teenager. She'll get over it." I turned toward Sophie. She stood frozen beside the counter, holding the dessert box so tightly her knuckles had turned white. Then she spoke softly. "I didn't get over the last time." The atmosphere shifted instantly. Claire frowned. "What last time?" Sophie hesitated before looking toward me uncertainly. I nodded gently. "It's okay." She looked back toward the table. "The barbecue last summer," she whispered, "when Claire told me family photos were only for real relatives." Claire immediately waved dismissively. "Oh, please, that was a joke." But Sophie didn't respond. She simply lowered her eyes again. Ethan's hand rested protectively against her shoulder. My mother looked irritated now, instead of guilty. "You're dragging up old things." I shook my head. "No, I'm finally acknowledging them." I picked up my purse. "That's different," Claire snapped. "No," I replied. "It really isn't." Then I walked toward Sophie. "Ready to go?" She nodded immediately. Ethan grabbed his jacket from the chair. Behind us, my mother's voice turned cold. "If you walk out that door, don't expect us to welcome you back." I stopped. For a second, nobody moved. Then I turned slowly toward her. "You stopped welcoming us a long time ago." The room went silent again. Claire crossed her arms tightly. "You'll regret this." I looked at her for several long seconds. "No," I said quietly. "You will." At the time, none of them believed me. But 3 months later, my phone started ringing almost every day, because without me, everything in their lives slowly began collapsing. For the first 2 weeks after that dinner, there was complete silence. No calls. No messages. Nothing. Claire blocked me on social media almost immediately. My mother ignored every text I sent afterward. Even Aunt Denise disappeared completely. And honestly, the silence felt peaceful. At home, things slowly changed in ways I hadn't fully realized before. Sophie stopped watching the room nervously during dinner, like she expected someone to remind her she didn't belong there. She laughed more, spoke more, relaxed. One night while we were washing dishes together, she glanced at me carefully. "Are you mad at them?" I dried a plate slowly before answering. "No." "Then why don't you talk to them anymore?" I thought about it for a moment. Because sometimes people only understand your value when you stop giving them access to it. She nodded quietly, like she understood more than a 13-year-old should. 3 weeks after the dinner, the first phone call finally came. My mother. I almost ignored it. But curiosity won. The second I answered, she skipped hello completely. "The bank called today." I stayed silent. "They're reassessing the mortgage." Another pause. Then came the question I had expected since the night I walked away. "Bella, how are we supposed to pay this without you?" I looked across the living room. Ethan sat beside Sophie, helping her with homework at the coffee table. She was laughing about something involving her science project, completely relaxed in a way I rarely saw before. For the first time in years, home actually felt calm. "I don't know," I said finally. My mother exhaled shakily. "This isn't funny." "I know. The payments could increase. I can't afford that. You should ask Claire for help." Silence. "Her studio is struggling," my mother admitted quietly. I wasn't surprised. Without my monthly support, the business had been surviving on borrowed time. Then my mother said the thing that clarified everything. "You know we depended on you." Depended. Not appreciated. Not loved. Depended. I closed my eyes briefly. "I know." "And you're really going to let us lose the house?" I looked back toward Sophie again. Then I remembered the missing chair. "No," I said softly. "You lost me first." After that first phone call, the silence disappeared completely. My mother started calling every few days. Sometimes she sounded angry. Sometimes exhausted. Sometimes strangely sweet, in a way that almost made me forget how cold she had sounded the night she told Sophie there was no chair for her at the table. Claire called too, but unlike my mother, she never bothered pretending this was about reconciliation. "This is your fault," she snapped during the one call I actually answered. I stood in the kitchen holding my phone, while Ethan cooked dinner beside me. "My fault? My studio is falling apart because of you." I laughed softly before I could stop myself. Claire immediately sounded offended. "You think this is funny?" "No," I said calmly. "I think it's interesting you built an entire business depending on money you never earned." Her breathing sharpened instantly. "You promised to help me." "For a while," I corrected. "Not forever." "You don't abandon family." The irony almost made me dizzy. Sophie was family too. Claire scoffed loudly. "Oh my God, are you still obsessed with that stupid dinner?" I closed my eyes for a second. And suddenly, I realized something important. The chair never mattered to them. Not really. Because to people like Claire, cruelty only counted if they personally felt hurt by it. "She's a child," I said quietly. Claire's voice hardened immediately. "And you're pathetic. Ethan turned you against us." Ethan glanced toward me from the stove the moment he heard his name. I ended the call without another word. That became the pattern afterward. My family blamed everyone except themselves. According to Claire, Ethan manipulated me. According to my mother, I was confused. According to Aunt Denise, everyone was simply emotional, and things had been misunderstood. Nobody apologized to Sophie. Not once. One evening, about 2 months after the dinner, Sophie walked into the kitchen while I sat staring at another missed call from my mother. "Is this because of me?" I looked up immediately. What? She shifted uncomfortably. The fighting. My chest tightened painfully. No, sweetheart. But it started because of me. I stood and walked toward her carefully. No, I said softly. It ended because of you. She frowned slightly, confused. My family was broken long before you came into my life. You were just the first person who made me stop pretending it wasn't. Her eyes filled slightly with tears. She clearly didn't want me to notice. I didn't mean to ruin things. I wrapped my arms around her before she could look away. You didn't ruin anything, I whispered. You exposed it. Behind us, Ethan stayed quiet, but I could feel him watching. Later that night, after Sophie went upstairs, he sat beside me on the couch. You know you don't owe them anything anymore. I leaned against him tiredly. I know. But guilt is strange. Even when people hurt you repeatedly, part of you still remembers loving them. A week later, my mother called again. This time, she sounded different. Smaller somehow. The bank sent another notice. I stayed silent. We might have to sell the house. I looked around my living room while she spoke. Warm lighting. Soft music from upstairs where Sophie was doing homework. Peace. My childhood home had never felt peaceful like this. It had always felt tense, like everyone was quietly competing for affection, attention, approval. After my father died, things became worse. I was 29 when he passed away suddenly from a heart attack. Overnight, I became the responsible one, the stable one, the fixer. Claire cried. My mother collapsed emotionally. And I handled everything. Funeral arrangements, insurance paperwork, mortgage refinancing, bills. Every crisis after that somehow became mine to solve. Not because anyone asked directly, because everyone simply expected it. And I let them. Bella? My mother asked softly through the phone. I'm here. I don't know what to do anymore. For a moment, I almost answered the way I always had. I'll handle it. I'll figure something out. I'll fix it. The words practically lived inside me. Then Sophie walked downstairs carrying a blanket, smiling sleepily before curling beside Ethan on the couch. And just like that, the feeling passed. You'll figure it out, I said quietly. My mother started crying. Actual crying. And for a few seconds, guilt stabbed through me so sharply, I almost broke. Then she said something that changed everything. You used to care what happened to us. Not we miss you. Not we hurt you. Not we're sorry. Just disappointment that I stopped sacrificing myself. Something inside me finally settled permanently after that. A few days later, Aunt Denise called unexpectedly. Claire took out loans, she admitted nervously. I sat upright immediately. What kind of loans? She thought, eventually you'd help. My stomach dropped. How much? There was hesitation. Almost 80,000. I stared at the wall in disbelief. Claire had borrowed money, assuming I would rescue her again eventually, like I always had. The next week became chaos. Collection notices. Threats from creditors. Her studio behind on rent. My mother panicking constantly. Then finally came the message I knew was inevitable. Can we meet? Not as a family. Just us. My mother sent it late at night. Ethan looked worried when I told him. You don't have to go. I know. But I needed closure more than distance now. We met at a small cafe near her neighborhood 3 days later. The moment I saw her sitting alone near the window, she looked older, tired, smaller. For a second, guilt hit me again. Then I remembered Sophie standing beside that table, holding a dessert she never even got to serve. My mother folded her hands tightly together. Claire's losing the studio. I waited quietly. And we may lose the house. Still no apology. No acknowledgement. Just consequences. Finally, I asked the question directly. Why did none of you ever treat Sophie like family? My mother looked genuinely confused. She isn't your daughter. The simplicity of her answer stunned me. She's Ethan's child, she continued carefully. We just thought, eventually you'd focus on your real future. Real future. As if Sophie were temporary. Disposable. Suddenly, my entire childhood made horrifying sense. Love in my family had always been conditional. Useful people mattered. Convenient people mattered. People who gave, sacrificed, fixed, funded, supported. Those people earned love. Everyone else stayed outside the circle. And Sophie never even got a chance. You know what hurts the most? I asked quietly. My mother looked at me carefully. You all assumed I would never leave because you never believed I deserved better. She looked down immediately. For the first time, she had no defense ready. I did everything for this family, I continued, and none of you ever once asked if I was happy. Tears filled her eyes again. We needed you. There it is again, I whispered. Needed. Not loved. Needed. The difference suddenly felt enormous. When I got home later that evening, Sophie was setting the dinner table. Without realizing it, she counted the chairs twice before sitting down, making sure there was enough for everyone. My chest ached instantly. She noticed me watching. Sorry, she said quickly. Habit. That nearly broke me more than anything else. I walked over slowly and touched her shoulder. You never have to check in this house. She looked up at me uncertainly. There will always be a place for you here. For a second, she looked like she wanted to cry. Instead, she hugged me tightly. And in that moment, I finally understood something my family never had. Love is not something people should have to earn by suffering for you. A month later, my mother sold the house before foreclosure destroyed what remained of her finances. I helped organize the paperwork, but nothing more. Claire lost the studio shortly afterward. They blamed me for a while. Maybe they still do. But the strange thing is, once the guilt disappeared, so did the fear. Now our home is quiet, peaceful. Every night, Ethan cooks, while Sophie talks about school or music or whatever new obsession she discovered that week. And every single evening, there's always a chair waiting for her at the table. Not because she earned it. Not because she proved herself worthy. But because family makes room for you before you even sit down.